Hey everybody, what's up? It's Jesse here from Pickle Madness, and today we're going to be taking a look at the brand new Hyperion C2 from Joola. Now, before we get into the specifics of the Hyperion C2, we need to talk about the differences between the original Hyperion. First of all, one of the major differences between the new C2 and the original Hyperion is the handle grip. Now, on the original Hyperion, you can see there's a ridged handle grip. On the new Hyperion C2, it is a smooth grip, which I actually find to be more comfortable than the ridged grip. Now, aside from the actual grip itself, the original Hyperion's handle circumference is actually slightly larger than the C2. The original Hyperion handle circumference is 4.25 inches, where the new C2 clocks in at 4.125 inches. Probably the biggest difference between these two paddles is the weight. Now, the original Hyperion was quite a heavy paddle, on average 8.4 ounces for the 16mm version, whereas the new C2 comes in at about 8.0 ounces on average for the 16mm version. For the 14mm versions, you can pretty much just subtract 0.2 ounces to get the weights on those. Okay, so the biggest difference between these two paddles is the unibody construction in the C2 versus the handle being separated from the head component in the original Hyperion paddle. Now, what that means is in this original version, you're much more likely to break the paddle off at the neck when you're hitting a really hard shot or just from overusage or stress on the paddle, versus the new Hyperion, which is built the same way the Perseus is, with the uniform construction. So that this weak point between the handle and the head and the neck is going to be much stronger and sturdier than the original version. The Hyperion C2 is quite a powerful paddle, though I'd still classify it as an all-court paddle. Now, where the original Hyperion lacked some pop and a bit of power, I think that the new Hyperion C2 makes up for. It plays in a much more similar way to the Perseus than the original Hyperion. You're definitely able to hit really powerful drives. In fact, when I was doing my serves, I think I hit some of my strongest serves ever with the 16mm version. After playing with both the 16 and the 14mm versions, I don't think that the difference in power is really going to make or break your gameplay. I think it's much more of a nuanced difference, whereas if you prefer just a slight edge in power over the control that this paddle is going to give you, the 14 is a great choice. Whereas if you want a bit more power, the 16 is going to be a better choice. And while both versions of this paddle are powerful enough, it's not going to be the kind of power that you can't control and you're just constantly hitting way over the net and having the ball slam back at you. It's really a controllable kind of power, and it's going to fit most players very well. Now, the biggest difference in terms of power and really, I guess, pop in this case, between the Hyperion C2 and the original Hyperion is the way that the ball comes off the face of the paddle. The ball seems to be much more slower to come off the face of the paddle in the original Hyperion, whereas this, the pop is really powerful, and it's going to come back at your opponents much faster than with the original version. We see that with the Perseus too, and that's why I like to say that the Hyperion C2 is kind of just like a Hyperion-shaped version of the Perseus. When it comes to control, the Hyperion C2 does a really good job, but I will say it is a bit harder to aim your shots correctly if you're not already in the right position. And what I mean by that is because this paddle is a bit poppier in the original version, you have to be ready and know where you're going to hit the ball. Or else if you're not in the position you want to be and you don't have the time to react, the ball might end up in a place where you don't really want it to go. Now, that was a bit easier to do with the original Hyperion, I think probably because of the weight. Now, the weight dampens the power quite a bit at an average of 8.4 ounces. So you're able to control the ball a bit more. If you hit it at a slightly off angle from what you're going for, the ball trajectory is not going to be too much different from what you were intended to do. However, I do think that the Hyperion C2 is actually quite a bit easier to control than the Perseus. I think that's the case because the sweet spot does seem to be a bit bigger with the Hyperion C2 compared with the Perseus. I think that could just be the shape. Honestly, I don't know for sure. When I'm playing with this paddle, it doesn't feel like I need to be as accurate in terms of where the ball is hitting on the middle of the face of the paddle. Of course, if it hits the side of the paddle or the very top of the paddle, it's not going to be a good shot. but the Hyperion C2, the sweet spot does seem to be pretty big. I'm able to get some really solid spin with this paddle. As I said earlier, I've had some of my best serves ever using these paddles, both the 14 and the 16 millimeter versions. And I think that's just because the paddle face grabs onto the ball really well, and I'm able to generate topspin really easily. So when I'm going to serve, I can smack the ball really hard. And most times I don't have to worry about it flying out because it goes over the net and drops down really quickly because of how much topspin is on the ball. Same deal with drives. I'm able to get really solid drives out of this paddle by smacking the ball really hard with some good topspin and surprising people by how fast it drops. Now this has the same carbon fiber face as the Perseus does, and while I haven't been able to play with this paddle for months yet because it hasn't been out for months, I do have a 14 millimeter Perseus that has been played with for several months, hit really hard, and the whole face seems to be holding up pretty well. There's no really smooth spots on it like we get with some paddles, and just the overall construction is holding up really great so far. So you can expect the same for the Hyperion C2 since it's essentially a Perseus in the Hyperion shape. Thanks for watching the Pickle Madness review of the Joola Ben John's Hyperion C2. If you'd like to pick one up for yourself or for a friend, you can check the link in the description below. Don't forget to use code YT10 on picklemadness.com for 10% off your entire order. Please like, leave a comment, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.